People who have worked on those fake ghost hunter TV shows, what goes on behind the scenes? I haven't worked on one, but one was done on a bar near my house that was supposedly haunted. Everything was based on falling flying things, glasses falling off shelves, beverage hoses flying off their places they're held. The crew proved there were ghosts by setting up a mock bar scene and putting salt around the bottom of all the glasses and left for the night with cameras. Sure enough, the footage showed all the glasses cups moving around, and the salt barriers were all disrupted. It was like 100% of the glasses had moved in some shape or form. What the freaking show failed to mention is that the bar is literally under an overpass for a train, and at a train station. The moving items are just because trains are coming by, and the building is about 50 featuring from the train tracks. I dated a guy who worked on Paranormal State and he told me that 99% of the spooky sounds and whatnot are added in post. Ryan Buell has had an interesting life since that show ended. Apparently he lied about having pancreatic cancer, sold tickets to a show that kept getting indefinitely postponed, arrested for simple assault against his boyfriend, and faced felony charges for stealing lease property and receiving stolen goods. He is also a recovering drug addict. I used to work as a gardener near a foreclosed insane asylum. Crappy job, but I'm an immigrant from Mexico, so not much choice. A bunch of butthole kids were making a TV show about hunting ghosts or something, and they tried to get me to give them an interview about all the spooky crap that I've seen. I told them I've seen nothing and suggested they frick off. Then they gave me $20 and I did give them an interview saying that I've seen a ghost. Last I heard of them they were to spend a night inside, but I don't know what happened to them, although I did hear the footage was released. Sounds like you had a grave encounter. I worked on one for a week. This was about 4 years ago. The hunters invited a psychic. Not sure if that was what he called himself. This guy was a big butthole and thought he was the crap. Big ego. Anyway, they were hunting in a haunted house, and this guy was doing a walkthrough before taping. He went into the whole routine. Cameras were not rolling. It was just for staging and getting acclimated. During this time I was at Video Village and could hear what was going on. He was in an upstairs room and began to feel a cool breeze. He made a big deal about it and insisted we start rolling. We did, and he went on and on about our room temperature drops mean a spirit. He started asking crew if they felt the breeze as well. They did. Finally the first AD, who was sick of this guy's crap, told the guy that the breeze was coming from the open window in the other room. The psychic threw a fit and stormed out saying we were all amateurs. Sounds like a prime nominee for biggest douche in the universe. I work and live in SE, Ohio. I've seen a few episodes of a particular show that investigates monsters. It shows the team going to all kinds of different counties and places, but the actual footage is normally recorded within a 25 miles radius. There are lots of oil tanks in the episodes. They mark the county and township on the safety emergency tags, so a well-trained eye can see that most of the footage is shot in the same area of SE, Ohio. Turns out the real monsters were the production crew all along. That ghost hunters show did an episode in a large, old building where I work. Rather not say the name. I laughed out loud throughout the episode at the idiocy. For example, they were taping in a freight elevator. Dang thing is in need of repair and has been for years. When it did a little jolt just before taking off, the hosts insisted that was supernatural in origin. Nah, that's what it does every time it moves. And it continued from there. Every single thing they said proved ghosts had a perfectly simple explanation. The company I work for loved the publicity, even though it was complete nonsense. Maybe the freight elevator ghost just takes his job really seriously and never misses a chance to make it lurch. I need to dig around to find it when I am not at work, but Brandy, one of the regular investigators on Ghost Hunters, had a lot of thoughts she shared freely after leaving the show. She basically said she didn't believe in any of it and that as the series went on other investigators started making up more and more BS so they got screen time. I did a tour in the Portland-Shanghai tunnels. Our host told us that one ghost show put dirt on the floor and squeezed against the brick walls of a completely open, finished basement to give the illusion of narrow, decrepit tunnels. Yup, I got that in my tour as well. I hope this fits here. I used to work for a company that had a few different properties buildings. One of the properties did not get much business, so it was usually just manned by a receptionist. The usual receptionist was this older eccentric gal, who would also smoke a lot of weed on the job, probably due to the boredom isolation of being there. On numerous occasions, she would tell me about how she was 100% convinced a ghost lived in the building. She even named him Matt or something. Anyway, she got the bright idea to call up a ghost hunter show and invite them up to film, which they jumped at. Mind you, she did not ask management for permission. Everything was agreed to, but on the date they were to show up, for whatever reason she flaked out and stood them up. Apparently the ghost hunter people showed up and were banging on the doors for a couple hours in the dark with no response. Fast forward a few weeks when I'm talking to the GM when he gets handed a letter. It's a bill for $1,600 from some production company. Half of me wanted to get out of that office ASAP, but half wanted to stay for the lols. The look on his face when he learned what happened was freaking priceless. The crew was ghosted by the nutty receptionist. Used to be on a show. Not a popular one and only a few episodes out there. It was a team of 3, an empath, an undecided, and myself, the skeptic. Well, my job was to debunk things on the show that the other 2, or occasional medium we had on, were claiming was paranormal. Every time I would debunk something, it never made it on the air. The empath, the owner-producer, didn't want to be proven wrong, I guess. For example, that meter they use to measure electromagnetic force, where the lights go from yellow to red, ours would go off randomly. Well, it wasn't random cause every time he power cycled a handheld camera or his tablet it would go off. I proved it was the burst of electricity or electrical field, IDK, from turning their devices on. Nope, never let that see the light of day. Cause it's a very common ghost hunting tool and you can't prove how it really works or else an exciting part of an investigation goes away forever. I love spooky stuff and the paranormal is really entertaining to me, but it sucked that he left out of skepticism because he thought it wouldn't draw people. I'm a fan of the original Ghost Hunters, where they would continuously prove that ghosts or haunting didn't exist, and present their finding to the homeowners to provide them relief. Even the main guy never admitted to hauntings. That was their thing. Once they got super popular they turned into just a normal ghost hunting show. I want a show, or to be a part of one, that does that. They go in, find something, and prove it wrong, but are still open to the idea and have fun with it. Because at that point if you do find something you genuinely can't explain, it has more weight because you're known to debunk nearly everything. I miss ghost hunting, it was a lot of fun to me equals. Even Ghost Adventures occasionally has a show where they find nothing. Then the infamous one where it was obvious the mom was making crap up and being abusive to the kid and they had to subtly imply they had to call CPS on them. I used to love those shows, not that I believed them but after a while got tired of every episode being like, Person A, SHHH did you hear that? Person B, no. Listen to what we caught on tape. Show. It sounds like a young girl with a German accent saying she has to find her doll that she lost in 1884. Oh. I've been to Tombstone, as several times when growing up, maybe around 10, brothers were around 12-16, and my dad got me and my brothers into the Birdcage Theater late at night, thinking midnight plus. Just one dude got us in for like $80 and a case of beer. Anyways, some of the exact crap that happened in a Ghost Hunters show that happened when I was there. Like crap falling over all out bangs. Ghost Hunters were all convinced it was a haunting. And I did too when I was a kid. The guy that got us in just started bitching about old wood and how the place is falling apart, lol. You have to pretend that what you're doing is worthwhile in order to keep the energy up on the cast crew. I've been a few where it was acknowledged that it was all BS and lem tell you it makes for a truly miserable filming experience. Follow-up question. Why do the hunters always talk like they're going to beat a ghost's butt? Show yourself like. Maybe it's not a malevolent spirit. Maybe it's Dave from the deli who got trapped in this dimension. Almost all the ghosts are trapped by producers at other locations and released in places the location scout thinks are spooky after they are recorded. The ghosts are trapped and returned to storage until the next taping. It's really a shame about the exploitation and poor conditions reality shows allow their ghosts to, well, not live in, but not on a show, but I was watching one of these shows while my friend who was a wildlife biology major was studying for exams. The guys on the show were making a big deal out of a ghost talking to them, and all of a sudden she perked up. That's her insert technical Latin name here, frog. We looked it up online too, and sure enough, identical sound. To me it sounded believable enough. It was a sort of freaky groan that could have been a ghost attempting a word. But it was pretty hilarious. It was just a frog. My summer job was as a tour guide at an upstate NY French and Indian War fort that the ghost hunters visited a few years back to hunt for ghosts. Between fighting and smallpox, hundreds of men died there. I worked the 1 to 10 PM shift, which included doing a final round, turning off the lights and securing doors. I was alone and walked the entire unit nightly for 2 years of summers. Never saw a dang thing. Of course you never saw a dang thing. Your job was to turn off the lights. JK. One of those shows filmed at an old house where I worked. I never saw the episode, but my boss reported their findings to us and we all laughed. Things like hearing noises in a room designed to amplify noises across the room, a whispering ceiling. I believe there's one at Monticello, and detecting motion where there's almost certainly a vermin infestation. Not only were most of the things easily explained, many of them were by design from the original prankster owner. There are spots in the US capital that do the same thing. It's disconcerting for a second, then amazing. Never worked on a show but have done paranormal investigation for years. Done many famous places in my country and met several people in the industry, mediums etc. Many were quite bad, a couple were awful, clearly throwing things from their pockets when the lights were off etc. I'm fully of the opinion that these shows are fake. Here's the dirty secret. Paranormal investigation is very boring. 99% of the time you're sat in the dark trying to hear stuff. I think most TV stations realized after a few episodes and pressurized the shows into faking stuff, or at least coming up with nebulous evidence that can't be disputed on TV. Smells, feelings etc. Doing more psychological experiments at sites is a lot more interesting. Can confirm as a former paranormal investigator myself, sat around drinking coffee and eating hot cross buns was about 70% of what we did, lol. I dated a nice girl once who had an ex-boyfriend whose ex-con stepfather was a guest on a ghost hunter show. It was an episode about a haunted cursed car in South EMA. At the end of the episode they made it seem like they destroyed the car in a trash compactor, but in reality the car was never destroyed and remains in the guy's yard to this day. So, for this reason, I imagine there is a lot of fake situations created on these shows. If I recall, they paid him $10,000 for his story and time. The guy turned out to have various personality disorders and believed his car talked to him and prevented him from ever finding work. But honestly I think he just made it up as an excuse not to work, doubled down, and somehow he ended up on this show. That's a weird coincidence, because I dated a nice girl once who had an ex-boyfriend whose ex-con stepfather saw Ferris pass out at 31 Flavors last night. I guess it's pretty serious. My wife worked as personal assistant to the lead and event coordinator for the last year of one of the well-known shows. She has hours of hilarious stories, from the very touching to the completely upsetting. She extremely skeptical, but she had 1 or 2 experiences in that time that pushed her into the agnostic direction. What's behind the scenes? Massive egos. These people are told they are special because they have a gift and then get put on TV, which is tantamount to Olympia for this day and age, even if you are relegated to the extended cable package. Egocentrism, more than anything, killed the show. Drugs. There's nothing wrong enjoying yourself, but not when your habit means you don't pay your employees. Unprofessionalism. Continuing from above. Never being on time. Bailing on commitments. Behavior bordering on. No was outright fraud. Surprisingly earnest about the paranormal, my wife never got a sense any of them were trying to dupe people. The hunters were high-strung folks with interesting backgrounds who would jump at anything and assume it's paranormal. She said they were like that on and off camera. Throw away because I'm still in the field, if not with this particular show, and I don't want trouble. I worked for a show in the Discovery family of networks. It wasn't a ghost or supernatural show, but the host had previously had one such show. He didn't believe a freaking word of it then, and didn't when I worked for him, despite part of the gist of the show being that he believed in this stuff and was going to prove it. Not much value to add here, but don't think these people believe what they're selling you. Most of them are also massive buttholes and borderline creeps. 2. There's a reason I left. I hear I've been replaced with a much younger woman. Don't know if that means what I'm inferring, but it wouldn't surprise me. The host I worked for likes groupies. Little late to the party, but I work in reality TV and I've worked on a couple. First one was a show where a psychic and a former detective team up and investigate people saying their houses are haunted. The crew had a running joke that the houses smelled haunted because 80% of the houses we shot in were literally disgusting. I'm not completely certain, but a lot of the families we shot, I'm sure there were other things happening in their lives other than their houses being haunted. Second show was a group of ghost hunters that would go to all these places that were supposedly the most haunted places in America, which is real funny because the night before they would go in to investigate, me and an AC assistant camera would be in the building at night by ourselves faking spooky crap and shooting all the stuff for the intro to the show that was supposed to be recreations of haunted incidents. It was basically us using lighting tricks, fishing wire, etc. to recreate some spooky stuff. Never saw a single thing the whole time we were in there, but then the ghost hunters would come in the next night and jump at every little thing and talk constantly about how scary it was and all the bad energy in the place. LOL. Ghost hunters filmed at a historic site I used to work at. A lot of people died there and creepy things happened all the time. A lot of material to pick from and they used none of it and made up their own crap. Only one of the ghost stories was consistent. Not my story, but an ex-boyfriend's. They were filming an episode of a ghost hunting show many years ago and needed a Native American medicine man for a scene to bless a house. So they dressed him up in native garb and gave him an eagle feather to wave around and some sage. He's Taiwanese. I lived and worked in a mansion 2 ghost hunter YouTubers had paid to shoot a video inside. We all still had to work, so when they put the video out and were like, "Oh, do you hear that? Footsteps." We were all like, yeah, because we were all walking about. What? I only worked on one, and we took a true story, changed it to make it scarier, then hired actors to pretend to be the real people because the real people didn't actually want to be interviewed. Then we hired other actors to be the recreation actors. There wasn't a dang thing on that show that wasn't faked, manipulated, or altered. There used to be, may still be, a show called Sightings. In early seasons, they used a legit scientific company for consulting and testing, and usually let the viewer make up their mind. In later seasons, they replaced the scientific method with a lot of psychics, and did things like, is this a blurry photo of an alien baby instead of what is this an image of? There's a big difference there. It's like the UFO experts that identify every light in the sky as a spaceship, even when it's clearly labeled Delta Airlines on the side. Off topic. But if you are entertained by ghost shows but aren't a believer, the most entertaining one is BuzzFeed's Unsolved Paranormal. It's available on YouTube and Hulu. It's got 2 great hosts, who have since left BuzzFeed to start their own YouTube channel, one of which is a scaredy cat believer and the other who couldn't believe in the paranormal less. It's the most honest paranormal show because in its entire run, literally nothing ever happens, but that doesn't stop the believer from freaking out to the point of nearly having a heart attack. Good stuff. Not quite a TV show, though it was featured in one once, but I used to work in a upmarket cocktail bar set up in an old Victorian house. A lot of the original design and architecture had been maintained, so needless to say, it could get creepy. Creaking floorboards, sudden temperature drops, unusual acoustics from other rooms, but all the weird quirks of the building were thoroughly explainable. The owner also liked to have a few wines, and tell guest stories about how it used to be a butcher shop, until one day, the butcher, his wife and child went missing, and were never found. So, with the combination of a perfectly creepy building, with a local legend which really took off, we got our fair share of paranormal investigators wanting to check out the place after we closed the bar. Usually they would book a table and sit there tweaking their instruments and detective contraptions. And when the owner noticed, he would loudly call me over and ask, why did you rearrange the portraits in the old bedroom, or can you please tell the little girl upstairs to stay with her parents? That whole area is meant to be closed anyway. One night after these shenanigans, a table of 3 paranormal investigators reveal themselves to us and declare that they were guided by their psychic, who is at the table, that their services were required to free a soul bound to this plane by a broken promise. They start poking around. Their make focus is pointing a special looking old Timmy camera in directions indicated by their psychic. I leave them be until I heard shouts from upstairs and scrambling. Now, I'll admit, I did a particularly bad job at cleaning up the night before, so I assumed someone had tripped or something. I run upstairs and find them in front of the big glass French doors, huddled around their camera. As it slowly inched out its instant film, the SHH'd me immediately. They took it out, and soon, a photo of the glass doors appeared, and trapped behind them, the ghostly image of a bride, staring back through the glass, and still in her wedding dress, from the day the promise was broken. Or so the psychic informed me. Actually, it was just the streaks of window cleaner I didn't properly wipe off the evening before. I've made this comment in the past. My wife and I used to watch those shows. Now, I'm native Canadian, Cree, and she's white. She used to bust my balls whenever they showed her. Built on an Indian burial ground episode. Wife to me. Haha, white man won't even let you guys into heaven. I produced one of the first live haunted house stays back in 1996. Me and a crew of about 12 people spent a week in a haunted bed and breakfast with round-the-clock internet chat. We posted photos and videos throughout the event. The B&B was bought by a woman who bought the house as a duplex. She remodeled it and turned it into one big house. Soon after the remodel was done, her motion sensor alarms kept getting triggered. Concerned, she called the police, who came and checked out the large house. As the police were finishing up the search, one of the cops approached her and asked her if she knew the house was haunted. She said no and asked why. The cop informed her that motion sensor in the main dining room was the trigger. When he entered the dining room, he encountered the ghost of a woman. It was suggested that the dining room sensor be turned off. Concerned, the owner hired a psychic detective who researched the history of the house. It was built by 2 brothers in the late 1800s. Each one lived in one side of the duplex. One of the brothers was married and had a wife and infant child. One day, while strolling the streets, they were hit and killed by a trolley. Using this information, my internet investigation team was asked to further explore this haunting. While most of us did sense a few eerie occasions, sudden cold snaps, objects moving slightly on their own, etc., nothing significant happened for the first few days. On the 4th day, the team decided to conduct a modern scenes. We all went up into the attic, which had been converted into an apartment. We turned on a video recorder and tuned the radio to only play static. We would take turns and ask questions of the spirit if one were present. After half an hour, nothing happened, so we ended the scenes. We rewound the video and played it back, not expecting anything to show up. But 3 minutes into the recording, a loud eerie voice could be heard saying, "He Henry, is that Yahoo?" Henry was the name of the one brother. Everybody, in shock, looked at each other and ran from the attic down 3 flights of stairs into the parlor. After recomposing ourselves, we all went online to discuss the incident, which got the attention of CNN and other news organizations. However, it wasn't something they considered newsworthy to do a story. The following few days of the event were uneventful. I was a production assistant on Ghost Adventures once. It was the most real reality show I've ever worked on. They actually didn't script the people I saw interviewed on camera, and they actually went into the house they said they were going into. Other shows faked everything. I couldn't believe it. I knew they faked things in editing but didn't realize how much the production did until I saw it myself. Take after take of scripted lines in fake locations. Interesting. I've never made it a full episode through any other ghost show, but I've watched dozens of episodes of Ghost Adventures. The vibe always seemed more legit to me. I don't know if they ever found any real ghosts, but I believe that they believed that's what they were doing, if that makes sense. Yes, so a lot of the spooky sounds are added in post-production. I met with an audio engineer once and watched him do some audio post-production on some big name ghost hunting show, and he literally had folders of eerie sounding audio that he would just layer in as needed. Everything from the ambient background noise to random bumps and creaks in the night was all fake and pulled in from his hard drives of spooky sounds. I don't work on a show, but a bar in my parents' town was on a ghost hunting show. In the scene, they have a glass on a table and it moves itself. However, the entire show fails to mention that the bar is attached to a train station. Whenever a train comes, the glasses rattle. Love on Dead Files, where at the end Ama makes recommendations. You need to find a 4'5" dwarf shaman Reiki healing Wiccan love priestess to come every day for 6 weeks between the hours of 3-4 am to light sage imported from one particular mountain in India, and only then will you be free from the demonic forces that will totally destroy your property value. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.